Hello Aviation 123 and whoever else is viewing, this is Nathan, and we have our 737-900 with the Alaska Airlines paint job on the ground at Seattle, so let's hop in. So, I'm going to be doing a basic FMS overview today. If I show up a shortcut like this, it's just a quicker way to get to that stack of instruments. For example, that overhead panel is just right here. If I click some buttons and I don't talk about it, it's just because it has to do with the startup procedure of the aircraft and not the actual FMS. So let's get started. Alright, so when you first boot it up, it'll say single FMC operation. So this is the overview of the FMS, and this ACARS right here is where you'd get a sheet from the dispatcher. So the FMS is just down there, and this little slot right here is where you'd pull out an ACARS ACARS data sheet from dispatch. So we have to go into FS Actions. This is just a simulator thing that you don't do in real life. I'd be calling up the ground crew and asking them to connect the ground power, but we will be and removing the pitot covers, which you do in real life, but it's a simulator, so we will deal with that, and to manually input the amount of fuel. So that'll say dual FMC operations restored. Now we have to align the IRS. So this is just past the overhead panel. We have to flip the IRSs to nav. So they're going to align, and then once it's ready, it'll say hold nav data out of date, which in real life we'd contact the airline guys and say, hey, our stuff's out of date. But this is just 1901 and it's just a month out of date, so we should be fine. And once it's ready, it'll say enter IRS position to give ourselves, well, functional instruments. But in the meantime, we can start things going. So performance, we can enter in our zero fuel weight. We do the math in real life, but it calculates this for us. Oh, there it is. So we'd go into POS for position, enter IRS position. So on our position initialization page, we hit next page and copy the GPS left position and enter into set IRS position. And now we have functional instruments. So that part's pretty easy. So we go back to the index and resume where we were left off. Reserves for today will be 4,000 pounds, so we'll enter 4.0. Cost index is basically a ratio between how fuel efficient you want the flight to be and how quick you want it to be. We'll have a cost index of 65. We're not going to enter in, or actually, we're going to use a cruise altitude of flight level 350. So we're going to use 35,000. So then we hit execute. And one limit. Normally we don't take off with 100% power, so this limits us when we hit toga for the takeoff thrust. So we're going to go ahead with this. Takeoff page, 5 degrees of flaps. Again, a weight and balance sheet would be how we do this, but automatically it does this for us with this and gives us a trim value that we'd use. and then right here if there were any abnormalities, like if you want to put the wind on the runway, or if it's a dry or wet runway, so we can tell if there's braking action or not and account for it. Okay, so we have that taken care of. Now we go to route. So we're going to be simulating a flight from Seattle to Los Angeles. This part right here, flight number, is really important, otherwise we won't show up correctly to ATC. So we'll type in ASA 1234 for Alaska 1234 for our flight number, so we'll show up on the ATC properly. So we go to next page and we're going to enter in our route. We will be using the SUMA 1 departure procedure Lakeview transition, so we'll type in LKV. And then we will type in the J67 jet route to LIN. So you type in J67 and you click it into VIA, and then you type in LIN to where you get off of it, kind of like an exit on a freeway. And Burgle transition. No, not transition. Yeah, transition for the star into Los Angeles. So Lakeview, J67 to Lynn, and direct Burgle. Next we go activate, execute. And you can type in an alternate if you want. We won't. Take off. Now we get to do this stuff. Oh, whoops, no, my bad. We go into legs. Alright, all the legs are correct. We're just checking to see if there are any route discontinuities, which can cause problems. Departures and arrivals page. Departures out of Seattle. Let's say we were given an or we were told to expect runway 16 left, so we go runway 16 left, and then find the SUMA 1 departure. Transitions, LKV, Lakeview transition. Execute again, so that's active, the active route. Now we go into legs again, just to check for route discontinuities. Good, nothing yet. Departures and arrivals again, arrivals into Los Angeles, and we will be using the Ermins 2 arrival. Ermin 2 arrival. Transition, Burgle transition. And we don't know what runway we're getting, so we just leave the runway blank and hit execute. We go back to the legs one more time, or the route, excuse me. Alright, Lakeview, J67 to Lynn, direct Burgle, Burgle Ermins 2, check the legs, which will give us everything. And looks like we're good. And as a reference for here, this right here, this 280, that's a speed restriction, and this is an altitude restriction. So you'd want to double check the chart, because it'll tell you which correct one to use. And if otherwise, like let's say this isn't the correct one, I type in this. Let's say the speed restriction was actually 250, I type in 250 Bravo / and hit execute. If the altitude wasn't correct, I do the same thing, but put the slash first and then that. So now we go back into initiate reference and check the index, ident, position, performance, takeoff, approach. And if we hit into the approach, oh, that's what I was missing. Back to index, takeoff. You have to click these guys in. These are your V speeds, V1, VR for V rotate, and V2. So now you have these speeds, and it'll show up on your PFD, and the airplane will call it out using the GPWS. And it'll give you warnings like that, which you can deal with once you check the proper charts. If you go into approach, this is your VREF speed, depending on what size of flaps you use. If I know for sure I'm going to use 40, and you do this during your descent, you click it, and then you click it in, like that, and it will give you your VREF speed on here. well, that's basically how you program the FMS on the 737. Thank y'all for watching.